Hello Davison, Superintendent Kevin Brown coming to you with yet another edition of Brown's Blog. In my last blog, I tried to address some of the questions and concerns that we were hearing from the community with regards to our March 2020 bond vote, which is coming up very quickly. It's just around the corner. And we want to make sure that we provide everybody all the information they need in order to make an informed decision at the polls. One of the questions that's emerged recently has to do with the new auditorium. Where will the new auditorium go? When will it be constructed? How long will it take? And what are we going to do with the existing space? So I'm here today at Davison High School. I'm standing outside of the auditorium, and I want to talk a little bit to start with about when, how, and what that new auditorium would be built and what we would do with the existing spaces we currently have. We are actually thinking about putting the auditorium on the southwest corner of the building. So it would attach to the existing structure, but it would go to the southwest, kind of out near the bus lot. Once we've constructed that new auditorium, it's going to take a couple of years to get that done. The architects tell us that to design a complex structure like a new auditorium, it's going to take up to a full year just to do the design work. So that's not something that would be started right away. Rather, we would start with things that don't require a lot of design work. Things like boilers, roofs, and maybe some repavement and things like that. Possibly lighting, things that don't require a lot of design work but are critical needs of the district and can be done immediately in that very first summer after we pass the bond on March 10. So if we do pass the bond, we will begin the design work on the auditorium. We'll begin some of the other critical needs work in the district. And then what happens to the existing space here at the high school once that new auditorium is completed? Well, we have some plans, we have some ideas. We'd like to provide a new studio for our DTV program. Obviously our DTV program is first rate. They're probably one of the best programs in the entire country. And as I pointed out in a previous blog, they're really working out of what used to be a storeroom here at the high school. The facilities are not real conducive to a program of that quality. So we'd like to build them a new studio. We'd also like to put in a new fitness center for our students and for the community. We'd like to establish a large meeting room. You may or may not know this, but the district really has very few large spaces for people to gather, other than the auditorium, the athletic meeting room, which is currently on the southwest part of the building, and the community room at the middle school, which is not all that big to begin with. But if we build a new auditorium on that southwest corner, that means we would also be building new backstage spaces, a new band room, a new choir room, and all of these spaces that accompany the new auditorium would be in that southwest part of the building. Actually right across the gymnasium here where the current meeting room is. So we'd want to develop a new meeting room, a new fitness center, possibly a new wrestling room for our outstanding wrestling program, a new DTV studio, and that kind of thing. So this space right here, this current auditorium space, will not go to waste. We have plans and ideas for how we'll utilize that space once the new auditorium is built, which will probably take a couple of years, a year of design work and a year of actual construction, and it could be up to 3 years before we're able to really finish that entire project when you talk about moving the existing aud and replacing these spaces. Another comment we've heard has to do with why the district purchased, for a rather large amount of money, $425,000, this old Colonial Inn and Suites site. I'm actually standing in front of Colonial Inn and Suites right now, which the district acquired last year. I think there's a couple very important points that I'd like to make. Currently, the district owns 22 acres between here and the high school. This site itself is 5 acres with this very large building and this very large parking lot here as well. And the reason we thought this building was so attractive was that it connects and abuts to property we already own, And it really opens up a lot of possibilities for us. Not to mention the price was extremely attractive. The architects and the engineers that we employ looked at this building and this 5-acre piece of property and basically told us that in order for the district to construct something of this nature, it would cost probably about $1.2, $1.3 million. We paid $425,000 for this building, and there are a lot of things that we're looking at it to use it for. We've heard criticism that, well, they bought this building and this land and it's just sitting vacant. And that's not really true, because we've already moved our maintenance and custodial supplies and offices into this building, and I'll take you inside in just a minute to show you a little bit more about that. But we're also looking at moving our food services here and our DESER program here, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the reason I'm here today is that if we pass that March 2020 bond, one of the first things that we're going to do is look at moving our bus lot here. Getting that bus lot off of the high school campus is going to free up a lot of additional parking, and it's going to provide a lot more space when we actually butt out the southwest corner of the high school and add that new auditorium. Another important point that I'd like to make is that to construct one classroom, just one classroom, it costs between $250,000 and $300,000. Here we've got a building, a very large building, and a 5-acre lot with a blacktop parking lot for $425,000. If we move our food service here, which we plan to do probably over the summer, that's going to free up a classroom space at Central in the event we end up needing additional classroom space there. If we move our DESER program here, that's going to free up space in our alternative building, which serves really both the high school and the alternative education building. So there are really a lot of very good reasons that we invested in this piece of property, and we do have plans to utilize it. Okay, so we've just entered the old Colonial Inn Suites building that the district purchased. I was just outside talking about. We thought we'd show you a little bit about the inside of this building. We think this would be a great place for our DESER program to call home. We just came through the door. You have a front desk here, which is kind of nice. If you walk down through this hallway, there are several small rooms up and down these hallways that could be used for DESER classrooms, for some of our adult education and youth enrichment programs. They have this big central ballroom, which when we saw it, we thought this could be great for things like our DESER Daddy-Daughter Dance, as a meeting room, as a facility that the district could utilize in a variety of ways. If we continue to walk through this large ballroom, you'll see a big loft up there, kind of a balcony as well. And then coming down this way is where we've moved all of our maintenance and custodial supplies to. You can see in this room, you can see all of our maintenance and custodial supplies. And the nice thing about moving all of these supplies into this building is it freed up a large space in the alternative ed building for our robotics team. Last summer, we began moving all of these materials and supplies out of the alternative facility, and that enabled our robotics team, our first robotics team at the high school, to take over that space and create their own area for practice fields and things like that for our Davison robotics team. So we are actually using Colonial Inn Suites, the building we acquired, at a great price, and we have a lot more plans for how we're going to utilize this building in the future. One of the reasons we haven't yet moved our food service or our DESER program here is that we had to do a little work with the plumbing. The building had sat vacant for a while, so there was some water work that needed to take place. We also have to get technology up to par here. We don't have broadband internet, so we have to run some infrastructure, some lines into this property in order to utilize it fully. And then, as I said, once all of those things are done, we can start moving some of our other district offices over here, including our transportation office, and then resurfacing the lot out front so that our buses have a place, which frees up a lot of space at the high school. We've also had some questions about our timeline and how this all is going to work. As I alluded to earlier when I was talking about the high school auditorium, if we pass this bond on March 10, 2020, in the first year, we want to start projects immediately. But we're going to have to start projects that don't require a lot of design. Things like boilers and roofs, maybe some parking lot resurfacing and things like that. Those things that we can do without a lot of design work. On the other hand, things like an auditorium, which will take a tremendous amount of design, that'll have to wait until the second year. Even something like turf at the football field will take some design work. So those types of things aren't going to happen right away, but they will be in the works to be slated to be done the second or third year in. So what we're really looking at that first summer, if we pass our bond in March next week, will be boilers, roofs, some pavement and things like that, maybe some lighting, critical needs of the district, which are really the things that we need to be focusing on first to begin with. As far as the other big projects, I want also to talk a little bit about how the bond monies are distributed and how that process all works, because that's important for you to understand as well. We're looking at taking this bond in what are called two series. So we would take probably about 70% of the bond proceeds, 70% of that 71 million right away, and we have 3 years to spend 80% of those dollars. That means in 2023, we would take the remaining 25-30% of bond proceeds, and we'd have an additional 3 years to spend 80% of those proceeds. So the reality is, to do the amount of work that we're talking about in this particular bond project, we're looking at 5, 6+ years before everything is actually done. And another question we've had has to do with, well, how do we know that the district's going to do what it says it's going to do with this money? How do we know it's going to be spent appropriately? I can tell you that the state of Michigan doesn't just cut the district a check and say, here you go, here's the money, and we spend it freely. What happens is the bond proceeds are deposited into a separate account. We then make draws from that account to pay the construction workers, the electricians, all of the people that are involved in actually doing the work to complete the project. As projects are completed, the state of Michigan conducts an audit. All of the projects are audited to make sure that we spent the money appropriately and did what we said we were going to do. The district also employs a bond counsel from Troon Law Firm that oversees the entire process to make sure that everything is done legally and above board. So those are some of the additional questions that we felt the need to come and explain and talk to you about. As I've said in my previous blogs, please remember to get out and vote Tuesday, March 10 of 2020. Thank you.